What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another one, guys. The Indianapolis Colts play their final preseason game of 2024 before the regular season kicks off on September 8th. So, with that being said, guys, we want to talk about who we are looking at, the things that we're looking at for this final preseason game for the Colts against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. The Indianapolis Colts obviously had a joint practice with the Cincinnati Bengals on Tuesday. And Derek, 1 week from Tuesday, the Indianapolis Colts will have to make a decision on their final 53-man roster. So we got to figure out who are going to be some of those players that the Colts are going to keep or decide to move on from or maybe sign to their practice squad. So we're going to talk about all of that in today's episode. But before we do that, guys, just want to remind you this episode is presented by PrizePicks, so be sure to hop over to prizepicks.com today. And when you do that or use their mobile app when you sign up, use the code BTJ for a $100 deposit match. All right, Derek, let's jump right in. Let's talk about some players or some maybe position groups that we're watching, because there's a lot of question marks still ahead of the regular season. So what are we watching for the Indianapolis Colts ahead of this final preseason game? And I think the big one we have to talk about, Derek, right away, and it's probably the most obvious one, is the fact that the starters are going to play for about a quarter and a half, according to Shane Steichen. So nearly the first half the starters will be playing. And I think the big question is Anthony Richardson and this Colts offense, how do they look? Because we've only seen so far through the preseason 2 series of the starting offense. So how does the starting offense look? And more importantly, how does the Indianapolis Colts signal caller look?
Yeah, obviously with the starters getting more time in this upcoming game than what they have throughout this entire preseason so far, you know, now is a good time to be able to kind of just look and see, like, are people starting to get comfortable? Like you said, with the signal calling, play calling is going to be extremely bland. I want people to be reminded of that once again, because odds are, Cody, that the Colts probably don't score at all in the first quarter and a half by some weird outcome prediction that I'm doing right now. They don't score at all, and then Colts fans go like, "Oh no, it's the end of the world. The Colts didn't score a touchdown or a field goal in a meaningless preseason game where the offensive play caller isn't showing their best plays." Like, that's where we're kind of at this point. So again, just a reminder to everyone, you got to take all this stuff at face value. But nevertheless, it is still fun for the fans, including us, to be able to actually see our starters get out there and do something. Doesn't matter really what happens. We just kind of want to see them actually do something. This is the last little bit of game action that we're going to get before the Indianapolis Colts take on the Houston Texans a couple weeks from now. So yeah, it will be fun to be able to see the offense and the defense and kind of see who steps up, who doesn't, and, you know, see what kind of loopholes are still in the scheme.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think within this offense as well, Derek, some things that I'm looking for is kind of the back end of the roster, because we already kind of know right now when it comes to wide receiver, when it comes to running back, when it comes to even tight end to a degree, right? We already kind of know who are going to be kind of those guys who are entrenched as the starters, who are likely going to see the field a lot. But the big question mark kind of comes at the end of the roster, because some of these guys are going to inevitably be cut, and they're not going to be on this roster, you know, come September 8th, or they're going to be on the practice squad, right? So my biggest question mark is kind of some of those backup positions. I mean, right now, Derek, I think for running back, we know the top 2, but like, how does 3 and 4, how many do the Colts keep at running back? You know, you have Evan Hall, you have, you know, obviously Tyler Goodson, you know, you have Xavier Scott as well, who I thought has looked really good so far in the preseason as well, especially in the Cardinal game. So the big question mark right there, I think, Derek, is what does that look like overall, kind of the back end of the roster there? What are your thoughts kind of on that running back position and maybe some of the other positions, wide receiver, tight end, because it's going to be a numbers game at the end of the day, Derek, and the Colts are going to have to make some decisions. So what are your thoughts on that? Who are some guys from running back tight end, wide receiver that you are watching specifically that you think need to impress here in the final preseason game?
Well, I mean, with Trey Sermon still being out, we're not entirely sure
That's true.
what's happening there. I'll tell you what, I mean, I'm interested to see if Tyler Goodson gets some more minutes, and I would love to see if he continues from that last performance. I'll tell you what, that those 6 rushes that he had against Arizona, that boy looks good. I mean, he looked very explosive, some great running ability, and that can definitely keep him around to get him a few extra snaps, especially if, the first injury that happens at the running back room, Goodson's name is going to get called up and he's going to get a chance to have a couple snaps here and there. I know how last season ended, and for him, I'm sure it's all about trying to have a redemption season at this point. It's kind of what he wants to be able to have. And for wide receiver, I don't really know if there's anything that I'm really looking for outside of maybe Anthony Gould, maybe having a chance to try to do something different in this game. That last game obviously had that fumble, and that's not a great look, especially for a rookie wide receiver that's trying to bid his way into getting some snaps this year, especially with the Indianapolis Colts, who have, a ton of young, explosive offensive weapons. If you can't fumble away your opportunities. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And now that Jelani Woods is out of the picture for right now, who takes those snaps on the back end of the roster, because we've seen Granson sitting quite a bit. We've seen Mo Cox taking the bench a little bit. So Will Mallory and Drew Ogletree, who rises amongst those two as supreme tight end 3, tight end 4? How does that one turn out? That'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And then I think when you're looking at it as well, Derek, on the offensive line for the Colts, I think you got to talk about swing tackle. I mean, there's no question. Blake Freeland looked terrible. And Matt Gonzalez, while he's not been as bad, he's still a rookie and he's learning and he's growing, right? And there's growing pains there, like we all kind of projected, So, swing tackle's definitely a concern. And what do you need to see, Derek, from both these players to make you feel a little bit better about the state of the Colts backup tackles right now?
Yeah, definitely not a great start on how we wanted to see that in game 2. Gonzalez definitely had a little bit of a step back from the first preseason game from what I saw, but it's a great way to learn. And, it does stink that we're not going to be able to see Bortolini out there either. And but I'm also interested to see how Dalton Tucker does as well on the inside there. He's been a gem in preseason so far, so definitely want to give my guy Dalton Tucker a shout out, and Jake Witt as well. Want to see what happens with him too, because I think he hasn't been good, but I don't think he's been as bad as Blake Freeland. I mean, if we see Blake Freeland have another extremely bad performance, does that change some things at who maybe gets the starting reps there at that swing tackle position?
Hey, how about Mike Panasiuk as well? The former UFL star that the Colts just recently signed. Does he show something maybe at guard? Because Josh Sills got waived. So it's pretty wide open there for another roster spot. And let's be honest, Josh Sills hot garbage. So good riddance with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there is some question marks certainly with a few guys banged up. Bortolini, definitely a guy that's a bummer that he's banged up. But I guess the good news is you do have Danny Pinter there. And obviously Wesley French going down. That sucks for sure. But hopefully Bortolini can get back before the regular season. But definitely probably not going to play here in this final preseason game. The Colts are just going to kind of, move him along and probably not rush it, which is probably a good thing.
Guys, football season is right around the corner. Definitely got to make sure you're getting in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. You guys can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks, guys. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with any entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. I mean, guys, look, I'm looking at some of these entries here. And if you're an Indianapolis Colts fan like myself, which you probably are because you're on here right now, well, I'm just looking at some of these season numbers here. And some of the stuff for Anthony Richardson, I have to get in on. Guys, we have one right here where it's 7.5 on the season rushing touchdowns for Anthony Richardson. Folks, Anthony Richardson had 4 rushing touchdowns in just 10 quarters of football last season. What do you think he's going to do this year when he's actually healthy and fully capable of going? Now, obviously, they're playing into the fact that they think he might get injured. Anthony Richardson doesn't. That 7.5 is an easy more when you want to talk into that one, guys. So make sure you are getting in on the action of getting some of these numbers for Anthony Richardson and other Colts players as well. Remember, guys, be sure to download the Prize Picks app today and use the code BTJ for your first deposit match up to $100.
Derek, I'm also interested in when it comes to the D line. I mean, we kind of know what this D line's done, so I want to see that disruption continue from guys like Latu, Tyquan Lewis, and Kwity Paye. But I'm also very interested in a couple guys, that have really been showing out, in terms of some young guys. Isaiah Land has looked really good so far, and the same with Adetomiwa Adebawari. I am very intrigued with both those guys, and I'll throw in Raekwon Davis, the new addition to the Colts, who finally is going to see some action, which is great. So, like, some young guys there for the Colts, but also potentially a guy that could have a big purpose and a big role in this Colts defense, and Raekwon Davis being kind of that backup one tech to Grover. So tell me your thoughts on this defensive line from the starters to, when it comes to some of the young guys and some of the backups.
Yeah, I mean, the defensive line has definitely been insanely fun to keep an eye out for in these preseason games, starting with obviously Latu, us paying attention to him in the first game. And then, in the first 2 preseason games, it's been all Isaiah Land and Adetomiwa Adebawari. I mean, those guys have definitely been fighting really, really hard to make it onto this roster. And I got to imagine that those 2 guys make the back end of the roster. I got to imagine they do, especially Isaiah Land. I mean, Isaiah Land just has been a rock star so far in this preseason. And Adetomiwa especially, too. I think he should get the nod over Taven Bryan, to be honest with you.
100%. Oh, yeah.
I definitely think he should. I don't know. I can't tell, like, overall if Taven Bryan is winning the majority of the reps in practice or not, but, like, as far as I can see from the games that I'm watching, Adetomiwa's making plays. Taven Bryan's just getting pushed out of the play every single time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just my view on it.
Yeah. No, I don't know if you've seen, Derek, but just the improvement from year 1 to year 2 for Adetomiwa, it's pretty impressive, honestly. You can clearly tell that he put in a lot of work this offseason, and he is starting to really show it out in the preseason. And that's just nice to have, Derek, that you feel like if Adetomiwa has to go in the game, he can still provide some quality pass rush minutes. Like, that's definitely really, really important. So, yeah, definitely excited to see all those guys kind of playing in there. Raekwon Davis as well, when the starters do go out, does that run defense really start to be better? Because it's really struggled without Raekwon Davis in there, with kind of Taven Bryan and some of these other backup defensive linemen really struggling and honestly being very poor at this point at stopping the run. So, if Raekwon Davis does play, how much does that change? I'm really intrigued about that because he is a massive, massive human being. And I'm just so excited because he's massive, he's young, and I think he has a lot of talent and ability. So I'm really, really looking forward to Raekwon Davis if he plays in his kind of debut, if you will. So, yeah, when it comes to that. And then I think for linebacker, Derek, really the only guy I'm intrigued about is Jalen Carlisle at this point. He missed a little bit of time. He was dealing with a few injuries, but he has come back and he has looked really, really good. And as of right now, I think he would be my pick for that number 3 linebacker behind, Zaire and EJ Speed right now. And we know he has ability. We know he has athleticism. he's got all those things you're looking for. And like I said on the stream, if there's one position the Colts know how to find and draft well, it's linebacker. So talk to me about what you're looking for from a guy like Jalen Carlisle, the rookie, and what do you want to see out of him? Because he's probably going to get a lot of action here in this game.
Yeah, you certainly hope that he's going to continue to build on this off season that he's had. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much more I can really say on Carlisle. I haven't seen a ton from him like in the preseason games, but I mean, yeah, if you're going to have a chance to see the field, I mean, that's a spot to do it. I mean, we've obviously seen what Alubi has done, and I mean, Alubi has just easily, clearly become the clear cut linebacker 3 when it comes to the unit. So Carlisle, can he find that? Can he find that sweet spot right behind Alubi to be able to see some kind of action? I know he's going to get some in this next game. Take advantage of it, man. I mean, last time we saw a linebacker go up against Cincinnati in the preseason, I mean, we saw EJ Speed do it, and EJ Speed had 9 tackles in that game, put his name on the map with that one, and we see what EJ Speed is now. So, just take advantage of it, man. It's a preseason game against the Cincinnati Bengals, man. You got to have fun with this one.
I'm intrigued to see also, does he get some maybe run with the ones in terms of like certain packages? Like if it's like a third down and the Colts want to put him maybe back in coverage, like could we see that a little bit more? Because I mean, that's clearly his strong suit. While I would say Alubi has some of that ability, I mean, Jalen Carlisle is clearly the better player in coverage right now than Alubi. Alubi is definitely just bigger, stronger, better in the run game, all those things. But yeah, I'm just intrigued about that. Just kind of where does he factor in? Is he number 3? Is he number 4? What does it look like when it comes to Jalen Carlisle? Because I think he's definitely going to have a role in this roster, but what is it here for the Colts and their defense? And I think obviously, Derek, you got to talk about the young DB room right now for the Colts. It doesn't sound like Juju Brents will probably play in this game. The Colts are just being very cautious with him after going out having to get some stitches. Doesn't seem like it's anything serious. The Colts are going to be kind of easing him back in, which is probably smart on their part there. But you're going to see probably a lot of Jalen Jones in this game, which he had a really good couple plays. He had 2 interceptions to Joe Burrow in that joint practice. And he's a guy that constantly, I feel like, gets crapped on, Derek. But I think he's a kid that could quietly have a nice season for the Colts as their number 2 corner or number 1 if he needs to step into it. And then, some of the young corners as well. I think you got to talk about Micah Abraham, Jalen Simpson, some of those guys right there for the Colts defense. And then you got to talk about Nick Cross. There's no question. Nick Cross is a guy that you got to talk about. Playing that strong safety position seems definitely on paper like a better fit for Nick Cross. What are your thoughts on kind of this young DB room for the Colts, and what are you looking for in this game for them?
Yeah, no doubt. A lot of young players looking to try to stamp their presence in this unit. And yeah, I think the big one is Nick Cross. How does he look? Where do the Colts line him up at? And how does he perform in this as well? Because, every rep that Nick Cross can get is so important. I mean, again, we were talking about it. Nick Cross was the youngest player drafted for the Indianapolis Colts, or even for the entire NFL draft in 2022. I mean, the kid is I think he's just turning 22, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean,
he's 20 when he got drafted. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he's very, very, very young. So, he's still a young guy that's still learning and doing all these things. And, I think that ultimately is where it starts. I mean, you're not really debating a lot of different things when it comes to this secondary, other than like what happens at safety with Nick Cross. Does Nick Cross step up and start becoming more reliable? If he's able to do that, then we're all good here.
Yep, no doubt. And just for clarification's sake, Nick Cross, 22, he'll turn 23 in September 10th. So still very young player in his own right, no question. I think you got to mention kicker as well, Derek. I know nobody likes to talk about kicker, but you got to mention it. You got to talk about it. I just want to see Matt Gay go out there and kind of calm some fears a little bit. It seemed like he was fine in practice, but I want to see him do it in a real game and kind of make us feel a little bit better about kicker as well. No question there.
Yeah, no
But
doubt. I mean, it's been scary to see him missing all these kicks in preseason. Obviously, kind of blame the holder the last game because Rigo wasn't holding this time. And I mean, again, for some people that doesn't matter, but for the kicker, that can matter a lot. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that one, especially since he hit a almost 50-yarder today in practice against Cincinnati. So, I mean, take that as you wish. So, as long as, if as long as he makes them in the regular season, and we have a performance like the Baltimore Ravens game every single week, then I'm fine with it.
yeah. Well, guys, let us know your thoughts here on some players, some positions that we are watching, that you're maybe watching as well for the Indianapolis Colts. Who are some guys in particular that you think need to have a strong final preseason game to maybe make their case for more playing time or even to just make the roster? Let us know all those things in the comments down below. But, guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.